Why is it worth looking at reference like that? Because you can get things like reference suggestions. Imagine this system being online, so as you're answering a patron or a member's questions, automatically bubbles up. Here's some sites that made, I'm looking at the words you're typing, I'm looking at the words other people typed, and this is the resources they ended up. And it starts prompting you with, how about this one? How about that one? And in the cycle, so as you're looking at them and you're going, no, none of these were right, I need to add one. Fine, you add one, and that goes back in the system, so the next time someone's typing, those resources begin to pop up and populate. So that every time you're answering a reference question, you're making the system smarter, which is not replacing you, but making you smarter and better able to answer those questions. If we stop at the references, conversations, and references nice and talking to people and don't move to this level, we miss the ability to improve our practice even better. So at the core of that is conversations, at the core of that is intermediation, at the core of that is reference, at the core of that is human communications. But human communications that we then take to the next step of joining with partners in technology, joining with partners in tool building, because ultimately that's what librarians are as well. We build tools. Those tools can be pathfinders, they can be schemas, they can be MARC, standard, whatever it is. But now taking and looking at the actual text and such, we can do this. And this isn't going to happen from doing Library of Congress classification schemas on questions. It's going to happen from looking at the actual use and the actual data. So, looking through this, what we ultimately begin to do in this world is, why are we doing this? What is the sort of final question, right? So we've got the conversations going, we've got the connections, we've got tools coming into it, but what we now really need to understand is that that is not the complete process. There's a final step that libraries have often abdicated their responsibility for, but is central to them. And it's happening in our libraries regardless of us, and that is an act of creation. That ultimately, all of these things are happening so these people can collaborate and create something. Create a tool, yes, but create identity, create a community, create law, create art, create materials that we can be part of a grand conversations of our communities and our societies, and how they interact, and really looking at how do we create things in this world. How do we not look at creation as some sort of act of lone genius alone in your shower, but understand that it truly is a gestalt of all the conversations and information and feedback that you get? To truly look at this as saying, this is what we can do. And why? Because ultimately, as a reference librarian, when we look at the future and we come back to our mission, as reference librarians, yes, we need to serve our organizations. We need to serve our communities. We need to be there to lend the helping hand and meet their needs. But we must also understand that we must lead in that. That at times, our community, to improve it, we must point our community in the right direction. Yes, listen to our community, but when they bring up the pie and prostitute suggestion, go, we could go this way too. We'll keep with the pie. We already have the coffee houses. The prostitution, not so much. Right? But we must talk about social responsibility, advocacy. We must talk about privacy. Google Buzz. What a brilliant time to be a librarian and walk in and go, do you see what Google did? This is why it matters. And the way that happens is not to walk into a library and have them completely erase all of your identity so that we never talk about privacy, because it's so important that we never talk about it, but to bring it up front and center. We did, several of us came to a conclusion a while ago writing about how schools are a horrible place to teach credibility, because in our K-12 schools we filter out anything that's potentially bad so you never have negative examples to show. Right? Because who wants to be the first parent to stand up at a parent-teacher meeting going, I'd like more crap in the school? Right? Well, the same thing that we do in libraries with privacy. We don't keep your records. No, we won't let you log in. No, we don't do all this. Because privacy is so important that we're not going to give you a choice. And not understanding the trade-offs of that. So we must lead and think smart about these things. We must innovate, because ultimately the purpose of these conversations are learning and knowledge development. And knowledge means changing your view of the world in a dynamic way. Knowledge is how we approach the world. And whether we change people's view of the world in little itty-bitty increments like Britney Spears was born on this day, or whether, as I'm sure most of you have, some massive experience where you change the world and go, I never thought I could get a degree in that. I never thought I could go back to school. I never thought I could get this job. I never thought I could leave that abusive relationship. I never thought. We can change the world radically. And that means that we're in the innovation business. And we don't wait for a committee in a time slot. We've got to do it with everything we do. But ultimately, this act of creation allows us to finally bridge the artificial gap between question and answer, because question point, early on tried to have this is the question, this is the answer, and they found that the first response from a librarian is often another question. So it said, what's a question, what's an answer? It doesn't matter. It's a conversation going back and forth with exchanges. The distinction between collection and service blows up. Well, this is collection development. Really? Why are you developing a collection? To help people learn. Really? We're doing that in reference to? Maybe we're actually the same thing. Between public service and technical service, between stewardship and activism. That somehow librarians, because they need to be neutral, which comes from the same root as the word neuter, that we get to sit back and not have any sort of voice or value in a conversation is not true. We need to be intellectually honest, but we do have a perspective. We do have a philosophy, and we need to bring it front and center. To fulfill our missions as librarians, we need to join our communities, not only in acts of knowledge, discovery, and access, but in creation. That we must see our role as helping to create information. For too long, librarians have seen our highest aim to stand and be ready to serve. But to offer that hand of assistance to those who reach out. But that's not enough. The world is not changed by those who stand ready, but by those who act, who shape, who reach not when asked, but when necessary. The ultimate future for reference service, then, is a dedicated core of innovators shaping communities, hand in hand with their members. So what I want to just sort of walk you through again is when we talk about the future of reference, we need to have a larger perspective. We need to look at what's underneath that, which I argue is learning, conversations, and values. That once we do that, we begin to understand what the role of tools are, like the desk, like the collection, like all of these things, like the physical facilities, a tool to an ultimate goal of knowledge creation. That the role that librarians play in that is a facilitating role, and that the ultimate expression of that role is creation. Whether it's creation of an idea, creation of an understanding of the world, creation of a tool, creation of a resource, ultimately creation of identity. That's our ultimate aim and our ultimate goal. And we must be proactive in that and not simply wait to be asked. Thank you very much.